Ethan
Em đây
Cross
rồi à?
stood in
Anh
the
ngạc nhiên
hotel
quá.
garden.
Anh không ngờ em đến
His
hả? Em
daughter's
thích làm ngạc
laughter
nhiên
still
mà.
Em
echoing
thật là
from the
tinh quái.
ballroom
Và anh
behind
thích điều
him,
đó.
while strangers inside whispered about how pathetic it was that he came alone. His ex-wife's new husband had just announced from the microphone that he could finally give Sloane the life she deserved. A direct shot Ethan felt in his chest. He was 30 seconds from leaving when headlights cut through the darkness. A black sedan rolled to a stop, and out stepped Serena Blackwell, his CEO, the woman who'd told him no 3 days ago. She walked straight to him, took his hand without asking, and said 6 words that changed everything. "I didn't come here for you." Then she led him back inside, and the room that had been burying him alive suddenly couldn't breathe. If you want to see how a single father turned humiliation into respect without saying a word, stay with me until the end. And drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Let's go. Ethan Cross had always been good at being invisible. Not in the way that suggested weakness, more like competence so seamless it didn't demand applause. He anticipated needs before they were spoken, solved problems before they became fires, and kept the machinery of Serena Blackwell's empire running so smoothly that most people forgot there was a human being making it happen. Executive assistant was the title on his business card, but the truth was more complicated. He was the wall between chaos and order, the translator between Serena's brilliant, brutal expectations and the rest of the world's inability to keep up. And he was a single father to an 8-year-old girl who believed her dad could fix anything. That belief, fragile and absolute, was the only thing keeping Ethan's life from collapsing under the weight of everything he carried alone. It was a Thursday afternoon when the invitation arrived. Ethan was at his desk outside Serena's office, buried in correspondence and calendar adjustments, when the courier handed him a cream-colored envelope with his name written in flawless calligraphy. He knew what it was before he opened it: the weight of the cardstock, the faint scent of imported paper, the excessive elegance that screamed money louder than words ever could. Mr. Ethan Cross and guest are cordially invited to celebrate the marriage of Sloane Mercer and Gavin Hale. Ethan stared at the words until they blurred. Sloane decides some Sloane, his ex-wife, the woman who'd left him 3 years ago because love doesn't pay for private school and you're too comfortable being small. She'd walked out of their modest apartment with 2 suitcases and a lawyer's number, and she'd never looked back. The divorce had been clean in the legal sense. No fights over assets because there weren't any to fight over. But it had gutted him in ways the paperwork couldn't measure. And now she was marrying Gavin Hale. Gavin Hale, the real estate developer whose face appeared on billboards across the city. Gavin Hale, whose net worth had more zeros than Ethan's annual salary. Gavin Hale, who represented everything Sloane had wanted and everything Ethan had never been. Ethan's first instinct was to throw the invitation away. His second instinct was to send a polite decline. His third instinct, the one that actually mattered, was to think about Mia. Because Mia loved her mother, despite everything. Despite the canceled weekends and the vague promises and the way Sloane treated parenting like a hobby she could pick up when convenient. Mia still lit up when Sloane called, still drew pictures for her, still asked, every single time, if mom was coming to her school play or her birthday or just dinner. And Mia had asked 2 weeks ago, in that small voice that broke Ethan's heart, if both her parents could be at the wedding. "I know it's weird, Daddy," she'd said, curled up on the couch with her stuffed rabbit, "but I just want us all to be there together, just once." Ethan had promised he'd think about it. Now, staring at the invitation, he realized he'd already made his decision. He was going. But there was a problem. The invitation said, and guest. Ethan didn't have a guest. He didn't have a girlfriend, didn't have time for one. Between managing Serena's impossible schedule and being Mia's entire world, cooking, homework, bedtime stories, soccer practice, school projects, there was no space left for romance. He'd tried once, about a year after the divorce. A nice woman from Mia's school. 3 dates. She'd been kind, patient, interested. But when Mia got sick and Ethan had to cancel their 4th date and then their 5th, the woman had gently suggested they were in different places. She wasn't wrong. So Ethan had stopped trying. But showing up to Sloane's wedding alone felt like walking into a courtroom without a lawyer. It wasn't about needing someone to validate him. It was about optics. about not giving Sloane and her new circle of wealth the satisfaction of seeing him isolated, about protecting Mia from watching her father be pitied. Because Ethan knew exactly what this wedding was. It wasn't a celebration, it was a victory lap. And he was the defeated opponent being paraded for the crowd. But 3 days before the wedding, Ethan did something he never thought he'd do. He asked Serena Blackwell for a favor. It happened in her office, late in the evening when the rest of Blackwell Industries had emptied out. Serena was reviewing acquisition reports, her dark eyes scanning pages with the precision of a scalpel. She was 42, composed in a way that suggested she'd been born wearing tailored suits, and she commanded every room she entered without raising her voice. Ethan had worked for her for 6 years. In that time, he'd learned 3 things. 1. Serena Blackwell was brilliant. 2. Serena Blackwell was ruthless. 3. Serena Blackwell did not do favors. But Ethan was desperate. "Ms. Blackwell," he began, standing in the doorway with the kind of careful posture that suggested he knew he was about to cross a line. She didn't look up. "If this is about the Singapore meeting, I've already made my decision." "It's not." Now she looked up, one eyebrow arched, a silent question. Ethan stepped inside and closed the door. "I need to ask you something personal." Serena set down her pen, leaned back in her chair. "I don't do personal, Ethan. I know." "Then why are you still talking?" Ethan exhaled. "My ex-wife is getting married this weekend, to Gavin Hale." Serena's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of recognition. She knew who Gavin Hale was. Everyone did. "And?" she prompted. "And my daughter wants me there, but the invitation says in guest, and I—" He stopped, forced himself to say it. "I don't want to show up alone." Serena studied him for a long moment. "So hire an escort." "I'm not hiring an escort." "Then take a friend." "I don't have friends who'd fit in that world." "Then don't go." "I have to, for Mia." Serena tilted her head slightly, the way she did when she was deciding whether someone was worth her time. "What exactly are you asking me, Ethan?" He met her gaze. "I'm asking if you'd go with me." The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. Then Serena laughed, not cruelly, but with genuine disbelief. "You're asking me to be your date to your ex-wife's wedding." "Not a date, just a presence." "A presence." "You don't have to pretend anything. You don't have to smile or hold my hand or play a role. Just show up. Stand next to me. Let people see I'm not alone." Serena's amusement faded. "Why me?" "Because you're the most powerful person I know, and if I walk in with you, no one will dare pity me." It was the truth, unvarnished and desperate. Serena considered him for what felt like an eternity. Then she said, "No." Ethan's stomach dropped. "No?" he repeated. "No." She picked up her pen again, her tone final. "I don't attend social functions that serve no purpose. I don't do charity appearances. And I certainly don't play supporting roles in other people's emotional theater." Ethan nodded slowly. "Understood." He turned to leave. "Ethan?" He stopped. Serena didn't look up from her papers. "Don't ask me again." "I won't." The Grand View Hotel was exactly as obscene as Ethan had expected. Chandeliers the size of cars, marble floors polished to a mirror shine, floral arrangements that cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. The kind of venue that whispered you don't belong here to anyone who wasn't born into it. Ethan arrived with Mia at 6:30, 30 minutes before the ceremony. She was wearing a pale blue dress he'd bought on sale, her hair in careful braids he'd practiced for weeks to get right. She looked beautiful, happy, unaware of the battle her father was about to walk into. "Do I look okay, Daddy?" she asked, smoothing her dress. "You look perfect," Ethan said, and meant it. They walked inside together, and immediately Ethan felt the weight of eyes on him. Not hostile, exactly, just assessing. The other guests were a parade of designer labels and effortless wealth. Women in dresses that cost thousands, men in custom suits, conversations peppered with references to summer homes and yacht clubs and private schools. Ethan had worn his best suit, charcoal gray, well-fitted, respectable, but it might as well have been a neon sign that said outsider. A coordinator with a clipboard and a practiced smile approached. "Name?" "Ethan Cross." And my daughter Mia. She scanned her list. Ah, yes. Table 12. Table 12. Ethan knew enough about weddings to know what that meant. Table 12 wasn't near the front, wasn't near the dance floor, wasn't near anywhere that mattered. Table 12 was the table for people you invited out of obligation. Thank you, Ethan said evenly, and led Mia through the ballroom. They found their table in the back corner, tucked near the service entrance where waitstaff moved in and out with practiced invisibility. The other seats were empty, presumably reserved for distant relatives or plus ones who hadn't shown up. Mia didn't notice. She was too busy craning her neck to see the flowers, the lights, the sheer spectacle of it all. "It's so pretty, Daddy," she whispered. "It is," Ethan agreed, though all he could see was the gap between their corner and the rest of the room. The ceremony began at 7. Sloane appeared at the end of the aisle in a dress that looked like it had been spun from light itself. She was radiant, glowing, every inch the woman who'd escaped a small life for something grander. Gavin stood at the altar in a tuxedo that probably cost more than Ethan's car, his smile wide and confident. The officiant spoke about love and commitment and partnership, and Ethan felt Mia's small hand slip into his. "Are you okay, Daddy?" she whispered. "I'm fine, sweetheart." But he wasn't. Because as Sloane and Gavin exchanged vows, Ethan realized that this wasn't just about them. It was about proving once and for all that she'd made the right choice, that leaving Ethan had been the smartest thing she'd ever done, and that he, by showing up, was the proof. The reception was worse. Dinner was served at 8, a 5-course meal that tasted like money and felt like performance art. Ethan ate quietly, making sure Mia had everything she needed, while around them the ballroom buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses and the unmistakable hum of people enjoying themselves. Then the speeches started. Gavin's best man went first, a slick investment banker who made jokes about Gavin finally settling down, and Sloane landing the catch of the century. The crowd laughed. Sloane beamed. Then Sloane's maid of honor stood, a college friend Ethan vaguely remembered, and delivered a toast that made his skin crawl. "Sloane deserves this," the woman said, her voice warm and certain. "She deserves someone who can give her the world, someone who sees her value and matches it, someone who isn't afraid to dream big." The implication was clear, someone who isn't Ethan. The applause was thunderous, and then Sloane herself took the microphone. She thanked everyone for coming, thanked Gavin for showing her what real partnership looks like, thanked her parents, her friends, her new life. And then her eyes found Ethan. "I also want to thank some people who couldn't be here tonight," she said, her tone light but deliberate. "And some who could." A ripple of laughter. Sloane smiled. "It takes a lot of courage to show up to your ex's wedding. So, Ethan," she raised her glass, "thank you for being here. For Mia." The room turned to look at him. Ethan forced a smile, raised his glass, and felt Mia's hand tighten around his poise. It got worse after that. During the dancing, Sloane found him near the bar. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft and sweet, like they were old friends catching up. "I'm so glad you came." "Mia wanted us both here," Ethan replied. "I know, she's such a sweet girl." Sloane glanced around, then lowered her voice. "It must be hard, though, doing it all alone." Ethan stiffened. "I'm managing." "I'm sure you are." She touched his arm, a gesture that might have looked kind to anyone watching. "But it's okay to admit it's difficult. Single parenting, the late nights, the sacrifices. Mia's worth it." "Of course she is." Sloane's smile didn't waver. "I just hope you're not letting her see how much you're struggling." It was a knife disguised as concern. Before Ethan could respond, Gavin appeared, sliding an arm around Sloane's waist. "Everything okay here?" Gavin asked, his tone friendly but his eyes sharp. "Just catching up," Sloane said. Gavin extended a hand to Ethan. "Gavin Hale. Good to finally meet you." Ethan shook it. "Ethan Cross." "I've heard a lot about you," Gavin said. "Sloane says you're great with Mia." "I try." "That's all any of us can do, right?" Gavin's smile widened. "Though I have to say, it must be tough competing with all this." He gestured to the ballroom, the chandeliers, the excess. "But hey, love isn't about money, right? The condescension was so smooth it almost sounded kind. Ethan nodded. Right. As Sloane squeezed Gavin's hand. We should get back to our guests. They walked away, leaving Ethan standing alone at the bar. And that's when he heard it. A voice behind him, loud enough to carry. That's the ex-husband? Poor guy. Must be killing him. Ethan didn't turn around. He ordered a water and wondered how much longer he could survive this night. But by 9:30, Ethan had reached his limit. He found Mia on the edge of the dance floor, watching the other kids spin and laugh, and knelt beside her. Hey, sweetheart, you having fun? She nodded, but her smile was smaller than before. You okay? Mia hesitated. Daddy, why is everyone looking at you funny? Ethan's chest tightened. What do you mean? I heard someone say you came alone, like it was sad. Ethan forced himself to stay calm. People say things sometimes. It doesn't mean anything. But you're not sad, right? No, baby. I'm not sad. She studied his face, trying to decide if he was telling the truth. Then she hugged him, fierce and sudden. I love you, Daddy. I love you too. And in that moment, Ethan made a decision. He was leaving. Not because he was beaten, but because staying meant letting Mia see him humiliated, and that was a line he wouldn't cross. He stood, took her hand, and started toward the exit. Daddy, where are we going? Just outside for some air. They stepped into the hotel garden, a manicured space lit by soft lanterns, and Ethan finally let himself breathe. The night air was cool, quiet. For the first time all evening, Ethan felt like himself again. Can we go home? Mia asked softly. Yeah, Ethan said. We can go home. He pulled out his phone to call a car. And that's when the headlights appeared. A black sedan, sleek and silent, rolled up the driveway and stopped directly in front of the garden entrance. The driver stepped out, opened the rear door, and Serena Blackwell emerged. She was wearing a midnight blue gown that fit like it had been designed for her specifically. Her dark hair swept back, her expression calm and unreadable. She moved like someone who'd never had to ask for space because it was simply given. Ethan stared. Serena's eyes found his. She walked toward him, her heels clicking softly on the stone path, and stopped a few feet away. Miss Blackwell, Ethan said, his voice hoarse with surprise. What are you— I changed my mind, Serena said simply. You— What? I said no. Now I'm saying yes. She glanced at Mia, then back at Ethan. You asked for a presence. That's what I'm giving you. Ethan shook his head, still trying to process. You didn't have to— I know. Serena's gaze was steady, but I did anyway. She extended her hand, not as a CEO, not as a favor, just as someone who decided, for reasons Ethan couldn't begin to understand, that he didn't deserve to walk back into that ballroom alone. Ethan looked at her hand, then at Mia, who was staring at Serena with wide, curious eyes, then back at Serena. And he took her hand. Shall we? Serena asked. Ethan nodded. Together, they walked back inside, and the night that had been burying Ethan alive suddenly forgot how to breathe. The ballroom doors swung open, and for a moment the entire room seemed to tilt on its axis. Ethan walked in first, Serena's hand resting lightly in his, Mia on his other side clutching her stuffed rabbit she'd retrieved from their table. The gesture was simple, 3 people entering a wedding reception, but the effect was seismic. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, heads turned, eyes widened, because everyone in that room knew exactly who Serena Blackwell was. She wasn't just wealthy. She wasn't just successful. She was the kind of powerful that made other powerful people nervous. Her company had acquired 3 major competitors in the last 2 years alone. Her name appeared in financial publications with the kind of reverence usually reserved for legends. She sat on boards that decided the fate of entire industries. And she was walking into Sloane and Gavin's wedding holding Ethan Cross's hand. The shift in atmosphere was immediate and visceral. The same people who'd been whispering about Ethan's loneliness, his sad single dad existence, his inability to compete with Gavin Hale's wealth, those same people now straightened in their seats like students caught misbehaving when the principal walked in. Ethan felt it, the change in air pressure, the sudden weight of attention that had nothing to do with pity and everything to do with recalibration. Serena didn't acknowledge the stares. She simply guided Ethan back toward their table with the kind of effortless grace that suggested she'd walked into 1,000 rooms exactly like this and owned every single one. "Daddy?" Mia whispered, tugging his sleeve. "Who is she?" Ethan glanced down at his daughter, then at Serena. "This is Ms. Blackwell. She works with Daddy." "She's pretty," Mia said, loud enough that Serena heard. Serena's expression softened, barely, but enough. "Thank you." They reached table 12, and Serena pulled out her own chair before Ethan could do it for her. She sat with perfect posture, surveyed the room once with those sharp dark eyes, and then turned her attention to Mia. "What's your rabbit's name?" Serena asked. Mia blinked, surprised to be addressed directly. "Mr. Hopkins." "That's a very dignified name." "Daddy says dignity is important." Serena's gaze flicked to Ethan, something unreadable passing across her face. "Your father is right." Mia smiled, a small, genuine thing, and Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. But before he could say anything, a shadow fell across their table. Ethan looked up. It was the drunk businessman from earlier, the one who'd told Ethan to know his place. He was standing there now, his face flushed from champagne and his expression caught between confusion and something that looked like fear. The man cleared his throat. "I just wanted to say hello. I'm Richard Chen. I work in commercial development." He wasn't talking to Ethan. He was talking to Serena. Serena regarded him with the kind of cool detachment one might give a mildly interesting insect. "I know who you are, Mr. Chen. Your firm submitted a proposal to Blackwell Industries last quarter." Richard's face went pale. Yes, we did. It was declined. Yes, I understand." "Do you?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Richard swallowed. "I just wanted to introduce myself, in case there are future opportunities." Serena picked up her water glass, took a sip, and set it down with deliberate precision. "Mr. Chen, if you're looking for opportunities, I suggest you start by reconsidering how you speak to people you assume have no value." Richard's eyes darted to Ethan, realization dawning. I wasn't." "You were," Serena said quietly. "And now you're wasting my time." Richard stammered something that might have been an apology, then retreated so quickly he nearly knocked over a chair. Ethan stared at Serena. She didn't look at him, just smoothed her napkin across her lap and said, "People like him only respect power, so we give them power to respect." "You didn't have to do that," Ethan said. "I know." "Then why did you?" Serena finally met his eyes. "Because you asked me to be a presence, and I don't do anything halfway." Mia, oblivious to the tension, leaned across the table. "Ms. Blackwell, do you like weddings?" Serena considered the question seriously. "Not particularly." "Me neither," Mia confided. "They're too long." "I agree." Mia giggled, and Ethan felt something strange and unfamiliar bloom in his chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. But the night wasn't over yet. Across the ballroom, near the head table, Sloane had noticed. Ethan saw it happen in real time. Sloane's gaze swept the room, landed on their corner table, and froze. Her smile faltered. Her hand, which had been resting on Gavin's arm, tightened into a grip. Gavin followed her line of sight, and then, like a wave spreading across water, the whispers began. "Is that Serena Blackwell? What's she doing here?" "She's with Ethan Cross." "Who?" "The ex-husband." "Wait, seriously?" Ethan didn't need to hear the conversations to know what was being said. He could see it in the way people leaned toward each other, in the way glances shot between their table and the head table, in the way the entire energy of the room recalibrated around a single, impossible question: who the hell is Ethan Cross? And that question, more than anything Serena could have said or done, changed everything. Because up until this moment, Ethan had been a footnote, a man Sloane had outgrown, a cautionary tale about settling for less. But now he was the man Serena Blackwell had chosen to spend her evening with, and that made him someone worth reconsidering. The music shifted. A slower song. Couples began moving toward the dance floor. Serena stood. Ethan looked up at her, startled. "What are you—" "Dance with me," Serena said. It wasn't a question. Ethan glanced at Mia, who was happily coloring on a napkin with crayons a waiter had brought her. "Go, Daddy," Mia said without looking up. "I'm fine." Ethan stood, his heart pounding, and followed Serena onto the dance floor. She turned to face him, placed one hand on his shoulder, and took his other hand in hers. Her grip was firm, steady, and completely devoid of the warmth one might expect from a romantic partner. But it didn't matter, because as they began to move, the room watched. "You don't have to do this," Ethan said quietly. "You've said that 3 times now," Serena replied. "Stop saying it." I just don't understand why you're here." Serena's eyes met his, and for the first time all night, there was something softer in them. Not affection, exactly, but something close to respect. "You've worked for me for 6 years," she said. "In that time, you've never once asked me for anything. Not a raise, not a promotion, not a favor. You show up, you do the work, and you go home to your daughter. You don't play politics, you don't network, you don't scheme." I don't have time for any of that," Ethan said. "Exactly." Serena's grip on his hand tightened slightly. "You're the only person in my life who doesn't want something from me. So when you finally asked, I said no. I remember. And then I went home, and I couldn't stop thinking about it." Ethan blinked. "Why?" "Because you didn't ask for money. You didn't ask for a favor that would benefit you professionally. You asked for help protecting your daughter from seeing you humiliated. That's not ambition. That's love." Ethan's throat tightened. Serena continued, her voice low and precise. "I've spent my entire career around people who would sell their children for a better stock price. And then there's you, willing to endure a room full of people who think you're nothing, just so your daughter can see her mother get married." She paused. "I decided that was worth showing up for." Ethan didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. They danced in silence for a moment, and then Serena said, "Your ex-wife is staring at us." Ethan didn't look. "I know. She looks upset." "Good." Serena's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "There it is." "What?" "A spine." Ethan met her gaze. "I've always had a spine." "I know, but you've been too busy being competent to show it." She tilted her head slightly. "Don't waste this moment being polite. Let them see that you're not the man they thought you were." "I don't need revenge," Ethan said. "This isn't revenge," Serena corrected. "This is correction." The song ended. Serena stepped back, released his hand, and said, "Now, let's get some air before your daughter falls asleep on the table." They returned to find Mia exactly where they'd left her, her head resting on her arms, eyes drooping. "Tired, sweetheart?" Ethan asked. Mia nodded. "Let's take a walk," Serena suggested. They stepped out onto the hotel's terrace, a sprawling space overlooking the city lights. The air was cool, the noise of the reception muffled by glass doors. Mia perked up slightly, leaning against the railing to look at the view. "It's pretty," she murmured. Serena stood beside her. "It is." "Do you have kids, Miss Blackwell?" Mia asked. "No." "Why not?" Ethan winced. "Mia, It's fine," Serena said. She crouched down to Mia's level, her expensive gown pooling around her, and looked the little girl in the eye. "I never wanted children. I wanted to build something that would last longer than I do. A company. A legacy. Does that make sense?" Mia thought about it. "I think so." "Good." Serena reached out and gently adjusted one of Mia's braids that had come loose. "But if I did have a child, I'd want her to be like you, brave enough to ask questions." Mia's face lit up. "Really?" "Really." Ethan watched the exchange, something unfamiliar tightening in his chest. He'd seen Serena negotiate billion-dollar deals. He'd seen her fire executives without blinking. He'd seen her dismantle competitors with surgical precision, but he'd never seen her kneel in a $1,000 gown to fix a little girl's braid. The moment was interrupted by the sound of heels clicking on stone. Ethan turned. Sloane was walking toward them, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes sharp. "Ethan," she said, her voice light. "Can we talk?" Ethan glanced at Serena, who simply raised an eyebrow as if to say, "Your move." "Sure," Ethan said. Sloane's gaze flicked to Mia. "Sweetie, why don't you go back inside? There's cake." Mia looked at Ethan, who nodded. It's okay. I'll be right there. Mia took Serena's hand without hesitation. Will you come with me? Serena didn't miss a beat. Of course. They disappeared back into the ballroom, leaving Ethan alone with his ex-wife. Sloane waited until they were out of earshot, then turned to him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Serena Blackwell, she said. Really? Really, Ethan replied. How long has this been going on? Does it matter? Sloane's smile tightened. I'm just surprised, that's all. You always said you didn't have time for a relationship. I didn't. And yet here you are. Ethan met her gaze evenly. Things change. Sloane laughed, but it was edged with something sharp. You know what I think? I think you hired her to come here. Or begged her, because there's no way someone like Serena Blackwell would be with someone like you. Someone like me, Ethan repeated slowly. You know what I mean. Yeah, Sloane, I do. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Look, I'm glad you're here. I really am. And I'm glad you brought whoever she is. But don't pretend this is real. Don't pretend you've suddenly become someone you're not. Ethan felt the familiar ache of her words, the same words she'd used when she left, when she'd told him he'd never be enough. But this time, they didn't land. Because this time, Ethan knew something Sloane didn't. He didn't need to be enough for her. He just needed to be enough for Mia. And he was. I'm not pretending anything, Ethan said quietly. But you are. Sloane blinked. Excuse me? You're pretending this wedding is about love, but it's not. It's about proving you made the right choice. That's why you invited me. Not for Mia. For you. Sloane's face went pale. You wanted me here so you could see me suffer, Ethan continued. So you could confirm that leaving me was the best decision you ever made. And maybe it was, Sloane. Maybe you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Ethan, but so am I. He turned and walked back toward the ballroom, leaving Sloane standing alone on the terrace. Inside, he found Serena and Mia at the dessert table. Mia had chocolate on her face and was laughing at something Serena had said. Everything okay? Serena asked. Ethan nodded. Yeah, everything's fine. Serena studied him for a moment, then said, Good. They stayed another 30 minutes, long enough for Mia to finish her cake, long enough for Ethan to shake a few hands and accept a few surprise congratulations, long enough for the room to fully absorb the fact that Ethan Cross was not the man they'd assumed. And then Serena looked at her watch and said, I think it's time we left. Ethan didn't argue. They made their way toward the exit, and as they passed the head table, Gavin stood. Leaving so soon, he called out, his voice friendly but his eyes calculating. Serena stopped, turned. Yes, we have an early morning. Gavin stepped forward, extending a hand. I don't think we've been properly introduced. Gavin Hale. Serena shook his hand briefly. I know who you are. And you're Serena Blackwell. I am. Gavin's smile widened. I have to say, I'm surprised to see you here. Are you? Well, I didn't think Ethan ran in your circles. Serena's expression didn't change. Mr. Hale, I don't have circles. I have standards, and Ethan meets them. The statement landed like a bomb. Gavin's smile faltered. Of course, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. Serena released his hand. But that's the difference between you and me. You measure people by what they own. I measure them by who they are. She turned back to Ethan and Mia. Shall we? They walked out together, and as the doors closed behind them, Ethan heard the unmistakable sound of stunned silence. The valet brought Serena's car around, a sleek black sedan that looked like it cost more than Ethan's yearly salary. The driver opened the door, and Serena gestured for Ethan and Mia to get in. You don't have to drive us home, Ethan said. I'm not driving you, Serena replied. He is. She nodded at the driver. I'm simply sharing the car. Ethan didn't argue. They climbed into the back seat, Mia between them, and the car pulled away from the Grandview Hotel. Mia fell asleep within minutes, her head resting against Ethan's shoulder. Serena watched the city lights slide past the window, her expression unreadable. Thank you, Ethan said quietly. You've already thanked me. I know, but I mean it. Serena turned to look at him. What you did tonight took courage. I didn't do anything. You showed up. You stayed. You didn't let them break you. She paused. That's more than most people would have done. Ethan looked down at Mia, her small hand curled around his. I did it for her. I know. Serena's voice was softer now. That's why it mattered. They rode in silence for a while, and then Serena said, Your ex-wife was wrong, you know. About what? About you not being enough. Serena's gaze was steady. You're one of the most capable people I know. You just never demanded that anyone notice. Ethan didn't know how to respond to that, so he simply said, You didn't have to come tonight. You're right, I didn't. Then why did you? Serena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Because 6 years ago you walked into my office for an interview. You had no connections, no prestigious degree, no insider knowledge, just competence and quiet determination. And when I asked you why I should hire you, you said, Because I'll make your life easier and you'll never have to wonder if I'm loyal. Ethan remembered. It had been the truth, unpolished and desperate. You've kept that promise every single day since, Serena continued. So when you asked me for help, I realized something. What? That loyalty should go both ways. The car pulled up in front of Ethan's apartment building, a modest complex in a middle-class neighborhood, worlds away from the wealth they'd just left. The driver opened the door, and Ethan carefully lifted Mia into his arms. Serena stepped out with him, standing on the sidewalk in her expensive gown, looking completely out of place and entirely unbothered by it. Thank you, Ethan said again, for everything. Serena nodded. Monday morning, 8 o'clock, don't be late. I won't. She turned to leave, then stopped. Ethan? Yeah? You're a good father. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. And then she got back into the car and was gone. Ethan stood there for a moment, Mia sleeping in his arms, and felt the weight of the entire night finally settle. He'd walked into that wedding expecting to be humiliated, and he'd walked out knowing he was worth more than anyone in that room had given him credit for. Not because of Serena, but because he'd finally remembered it himself. He carried Mia upstairs, tucked her into bed, and sat in the quiet of his living room. Tomorrow, everything would go back to normal. But tonight, Ethan Cross had won. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic below. Ethan sat on his worn couch, still wearing his suit, staring at nothing in particular. His phone buzzed on the coffee table, a text from his neighbor asking if Mia had fun at the wedding. He didn't answer. He couldn't find the words to explain what had just happened because he wasn't entirely sure himself. What he did know was that something had shifted, not in the external world. His apartment was still small, his bank account still modest, his life still the same careful balance of work and fatherhood. But inside, in the place where Sloane's words had lived for 3 years, like splinters under skin, something had finally gone quiet. He pulled off his tie, tossed it onto the armrest, and let his head fall back against the cushions. Serena Blackwell had shown up. Not because she owed him, not because she wanted something, but because after 6 years of watching him be invisible, she'd decided he deserved to be seen. Ethan closed his eyes and tried to process that. Sleep came eventually, restless and thin, and when morning light filtered through the blinds, he woke to the sound of Mia padding into the living room in her pajamas. Daddy? He sat up, blinking. Hey, sweetheart. You slept on the couch. Yeah, I was tired. Mia climbed up beside him, tucking herself under his arm. Last night was weird. Ethan smiled faintly. Yeah, it was. But I liked Ms. Blackwell. Did you? Mia nodded. She's nice, and she fixed my braid. She did. Is she your girlfriend? The question caught Ethan off guard. No, baby, she's just someone Daddy works with. But she held your hand. Sometimes adults do that when they're being polite. Mia considered this, her small face scrunched in thought. Mom didn't look happy when she saw you with her. Ethan's chest tightened. Did that bother you? Mia shrugged. I don't know. Mom's always happy with Gavin. I thought she'd be happy about everything. Sometimes people are complicated, Ethan said carefully. Are you happy, Daddy? The question hung in the air, simple and devastating. Ethan looked down at his daughter, at her wide eyes and tangled morning hair, and realized he didn't have to lie. "Yeah," he said. "I am." And for the first time in a long time, it was true. They spent the weekend the way they always did: grocery shopping, playground time, homework, cooking together. Normal life. Safe life. But underneath it all, Ethan felt different, lighter, like he'd been carrying a weight he hadn't noticed until it was gone. Monday morning arrived with the inevitability of routine. Ethan dropped Mia at school, kissed her forehead, and headed to Blackwell Industries. The building rose 52 stories into the sky, all glass and steel and quiet power. He'd walked through those doors 1,000 times, but today felt different. Because today, he'd be seeing Serena again, and he had no idea what that would be like. He arrived at 7:45, 15 minutes early as always, and made his way to the executive floor. His desk sat outside Serena's office, a position that gave him visibility into her world while remaining firmly outside it. He set down his bag, powered on his computer, and started sorting through the morning emails. At exactly 8 o'clock, the elevator doors opened and Serena stepped out. She was back in her armor, a charcoal suit, hair pulled into a sleek bun, expression as unreadable as ever. She moved past Ethan's desk without a word, entered her office, and closed the door behind her. Ethan stared at the closed door. No acknowledgement, no greeting, nothing. It was as if Saturday night had never happened. He told himself that was fine, expected even. Serena had done him a favor, and now they were back to business. That was how it worked in her world. Clean lines, no bleeding of personal into professional. He turned back to his computer and got to work. An hour later, the intercom on his desk buzzed. "Ethan, my office." He stood, grabbed his tablet, and walked in. Serena was at her desk, reviewing a contract. She didn't look up. "The Singapore proposal needs revisions," she said. "Schedule a call with their team for Wednesday, and push my lunch with the board to 1:30. Done. Also, I need the quarterly reports compiled by Thursday. I'll have them ready Wednesday." "Good." Ethan waited. Serena kept reading. Finally, he said, "Is there anything else?" She looked up then, her dark eyes meeting his with the same cool professionalism she'd always had. "No, that's all." Ethan nodded and turned to leave. "Ethan," he stopped. "Close the door." He did, then turned back to face her. Serena set down the contract and leaned back in her chair. "We're not going to talk about Saturday." "I wasn't planning to." "Good. Because what happened was a one-time event. It doesn't change our working relationship." "I understand." "Do you?" Ethan met her gaze evenly. "You showed up because I asked. You didn't owe me that, and I'm grateful. But I'm not going to make it awkward by pretending it meant something it didn't." Serena studied him for a long moment. "You're handling this better than I expected." "I've had practice managing expectations." Something flickered across her face. Not quite a smile, but close. "Fair enough." She picked up the contract again, a clear dismissal. Ethan left the office and returned to his desk, and the day continued like any other. But that afternoon, as Ethan was compiling meeting notes, his phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. He answered. "Ethan Cross." "Mr. Cross, this is Julian Voss. I'm a senior partner at Hale Development Group." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Gavin's company." "How can I help you?" Ethan asked carefully. "I was at the wedding Saturday night," Julian said, his tone friendly but probing. "I have to say, I was quite surprised to see you there with Serena Blackwell." Ethan said nothing. "I'm calling because we're always looking for talented professionals," Julian continued, "and anyone who has the confidence of someone like Ms. Blackwell is someone we'd like to know better." "I appreciate that," Ethan said slowly, "but I'm not looking to make a move right now." "I understand. But if you ever are, I hope you'll reach out. We take care of our people, Mr. Cross." "Very well." The implication was clear. They wanted to know how close he was to Serena. They wanted access. "I'll keep that in mind," Ethan said. "Please do. And give my regards to Ms. Blackwell." The call ended, and Ethan sat there staring at his phone. They thought he was connected. They thought he had influence, all because Serena had held his hand for one night. Over the next 2 days, 3 more calls came in. 2 from investment firms. 1 from a corporate headhunter. all of them suddenly very interested in Ethan Cross, executive assistant. He didn't tell Serena. What would he say? That people were trying to use him to get to her? She already knew that. It was the reality of her world. But on Wednesday afternoon, as Ethan was preparing to leave for the day, Serena's door opened and she stepped out. "Walk with me," she said. It wasn't a request. Ethan grabbed his jacket and followed her into the elevator. They rode down in silence, exited into the lobby, and stepped out onto the street. The city was alive with rush hour energy, honking cars, hurried pedestrians, the smell of street vendors, and exhaust. Serena started walking, and Ethan kept pace. "You've been getting calls," she said. It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" Ethan asked. "Because I've been getting calls. People asking about you, asking if we're involved, asking if you have influence over my decisions." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It's predictable." She turned down a quieter side street away from the crowd. "What matters is how you respond." "I've been turning them down." "I know. I checked." Of course she had. They reached a small park, barely more than a patch of green between buildings, and Serena sat on a bench. Ethan sat beside her. "Saturday night was necessary," Serena said, "but it had consequences." "I know." "No, you don't." She turned to face him. "People now think you're more than my assistant. They think you have my ear, my trust, my favor, and they will try to use that. I won't let them." "I know you won't, but that's not the point." Serena's expression was serious. "The point is that you've been pulled into a world you didn't ask for. A world where people will smile at you while calculating your value, where kindness is currency and relationships are leverage." "Sounds like your world," Ethan said quietly. "It is, and I'm offering you a choice." Ethan frowned. "What choice?" "You can go back to being invisible. I'll make a statement, clarify that Saturday was a favor, nothing more. The calls will stop. People will lose interest. Your life will return to normal. Or," Serena's gaze was steady, "or you can accept that things have changed, that people see you differently now, whether you like it or not, and you can decide what to do with that." Ethan shook his head. "I don't want power. I don't want influence. I just want to do my job and take care of my daughter." "I know, but sometimes what we want and what we get are different things." Serena paused. "You're good at what you do, Ethan. Better than good. You've been running my schedule, managing crises, and keeping everything on track for 6 years. You could do more." "Like what?" "Like move up. Chief of staff, senior advisor, a role where your competence is recognized and compensated." Ethan stared at her. "You're offering me a promotion?" "I'm offering you an opportunity. What you do with it is up to you." He didn't know what to say. "Think about it," Serena said, "but don't take too long. The world moves fast, and opportunities close faster." She stood, smoothed her skirt, and walked back toward the office, leaving Ethan alone on the bench. That night, Ethan sat at his kitchen table while Mia did homework and tried to make sense of everything. A promotion would mean more money, better security for Mia, the ability to stop worrying about every unexpected expense, but it would also mean more hours, more responsibility, more time away from the one person who mattered most. "Daddy, what's 6 times 8? Mia asked, chewing on her pencil. 48, Ethan said absently. "Are you okay?" He looked up. "Yeah, sweetheart, just thinking." "About Miss Blackwell?" Ethan blinked. "Why would you say that?" Mia shrugged. "You've been weird since the wedding." "Weird how?" "I don't know, like you're thinking really hard about something." She wasn't wrong. "Miss Blackwell offered me a new job," Ethan said carefully. "A better one." Mia's eyes widened. "That's good, right?" "Maybe, but it would mean working more." "Oh," Mia's face fell. "Would you still pick me up from school?" And there it was, the only question that mattered. "I don't know," Ethan admitted. Mia went quiet, turning back to her homework. Ethan watched her, the small person who trusted him completely, and felt the weight of the choice settle on his shoulders. More money meant stability, but it also meant sacrifice. And he'd already sacrificed so much. The next morning, Ethan walked into Serena's office and said, "I can't take the promotion." Serena looked up from her laptop. "Why not?" Because Mia needs me. And if I take a bigger role, I won't be able to give her what she needs. Which is? A father who shows up. Serena closed her laptop. You think I don't understand that? I think you don't have kids, so you don't know what it's like to choose between career and presence. You're right. I don't. Serena stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the city. But I do know what it's like to watch people waste their potential because they're afraid of what success will cost. It's not about fear, Ethan said. It's about priorities. And your priority is Mia. Yes. Serena turned to face him. What if I told you the role would give you more control over your schedule, not less? What if I told you it would mean delegating the late nights to someone else so you could be home for dinner? Ethan frowned. Is that true? It can be, if we structure it right. Serena crossed her arms. You're assuming success means abandoning your daughter, but it doesn't have to. Not if you're smart about it. And you think I'm smart about it? I think you're one of the few people I trust to figure it out. Ethan sat down heavily in the chair across from her desk. Why are you pushing this? Because you deserve more than you're asking for. Serena's voice was firm. You've spent 6 years making my life easier. Let me make yours better. I don't need better. I need stable. Stable is what you have now. Better is what you could have. She sat down across from him. Ethan, you're afraid. I get it. You've been burned. Your ex-wife told you that you weren't enough, and part of you still believes her. That's not... It is. Serena's gaze was unflinching. But she was wrong. You are enough. You're more than enough. And it's time you started acting like it. The words hit harder than Ethan expected. He looked down at his hands, at the calluses from years of holding Mia, cooking dinners, doing laundry, living small. What if I fail? He asked quietly. Then you fail, Serena said simply. But at least you'll fail trying, and that's more than most people can say. Ethan met her eyes. You really believe I can do this? I wouldn't offer it if I didn't. He sat there for a long moment, feeling the weight of possibility pressing against the comfort of routine. And then he said, Okay. Serena's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes softened. Okay? Yeah, I'll take the role, but on one condition, which is, I pick Mia up from school 3 days a week, non-negotiable. Serena nodded. Done. They shook hands, and Ethan felt the ground shift beneath him. He was moving up, and for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of what that meant. But that evening, as Ethan was packing up to leave, his phone rang again. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Ethan Cross. Ethan, it's Sloan. His entire body went cold. What do you want? He asked, his voice flat. I wanted to talk. About Saturday. There's nothing to talk about. Please. Her voice was different, smaller. Just 5 minutes. Ethan closed his eyes. Fine. 5 minutes. Can we meet? There's a coffee shop near your office, the one on 5th. When? Now. I'm already here. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. I'll be there in 10. He hung up, grabbed his coat, and headed downstairs. The coffee shop was small, tucked between a bookstore and a dry cleaner, the kind of place that survived on regulars and good espresso. Ethan walked in and saw Sloan sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a paper cup. She looked up when he entered, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Then Ethan sat down across from her. 5 minutes, he said. Sloan nodded. I've been thinking about what you said at the wedding. Which part? The part where you said I invited you so I could watch you suffer. Ethan said nothing. You were right, Sloan said quietly. I did. I wanted you to see what I had, what I'd built. I wanted you to feel small. Congratulations, it worked. But then you showed up with her. Sloan's voice cracked slightly. And I realized something. What? That I have no idea who you are anymore. Ethan leaned back. I'm the same person I've always been, Sloan. You just stopped paying attention. I know. She looked down at her cup. I left because I thought you'd never be more than what you were. But you are more. You always were. I just didn't see it. Why are you telling me this? Because I owe you an apology. Sloane met his eyes. I'm sorry. For leaving the way I did. For making you feel like you weren't enough. For everything. Ethan sat there, waiting to feel something. Anger, vindication, satisfaction. But all he felt was tired. Okay, he said. Sloane blinked. Okay? Yeah. Apology accepted. That's it? What do you want me to say, Sloane? That I forgive you? Fine. I forgive you. That I've moved on? I have. That Saturday night changed everything? It didn't. He stood. You married Gavin. I'm raising Mia. We both got what we wanted. Did we? Ethan paused. Yeah, I think we did. He turned and walked out, leaving Sloane sitting alone. And as he stepped onto the street, the city buzzing around him, Ethan realized something. He didn't need Sloane's apology. He didn't need her validation. He didn't need her at all. Because the life he'd built, small and unglamorous as it was his. And it was enough. The walk back to the office felt different. The evening air was crisp, the city settling into that peculiar rhythm between rush hour and nightlife, and Ethan moved through it with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. Sloane's apology had been genuine, he believed that, but it had also been irrelevant. Her validation wasn't the prize he'd been chasing all along. He'd simply been trying to survive with his dignity intact, and somewhere in the chaos of the past week, he'd realized he already had. When he reached Blackwell Industries, the lobby was nearly empty. Security nodded at him as he passed, and he took the elevator back up to the executive floor. He expected it to be dark, abandoned for the evening, but light still spilled from Serena's office. He hesitated at his desk, then knocked on her door. Come in, she called. Serena was still at her desk, glasses perched on her nose, a stack of documents spread before her like a battle plan. She glanced up when Ethan entered. I thought you'd left, she said. I did. I came back. Why? Ethan closed the door behind him and sat down in the chair across from her. Sloane called. She wanted to meet. Serena's expression didn't change, but she set down her pen. And? And she apologized. For what? For everything, for leaving, for making me feel small, for the wedding. Ethan leaned back. She said she didn't recognize who I was anymore. What did you say? I told her I was the same person I'd always been. She just stopped looking. Serena studied him for a moment. How do you feel? Honestly? Nothing. Ethan met her eyes. I thought I'd feel vindicated or angry or something, but I just felt tired. Like I'd been carrying a conversation in my head for 3 years, and it finally ended. That's growth, Serena said simply. Is it? Yes. Most people spend their entire lives needing the people who hurt them to acknowledge it. You just let it go. She picked up her pen again, tapping it against the desk. That's rare. Ethan wasn't sure what to say to that, so he changed the subject. You're still here. It's almost 8. I'm always here. Don't you have a life outside this office? Serena's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. This is my life. That's sad. Is it? She tilted her head. You work. You parent. You survive. I work. I build. I succeed. We both chose what mattered to us. Except I have Mia. You have, what, quarterly reports? I have a company that employs 3,000 people. I have influence over industries that shape how people live. I have legacy. Serena's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. That's not nothing, Ethan. I didn't say it was nothing. I said it was lonely. The words hung between them. Serena set down her pen, removed her glasses, and looked at him directly. You want to know why I showed up Saturday? You already told me. Loyalty. That's part of it. But there's more. She stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the city lights. I spent my entire life building walls, making sure no one could get close enough to hurt me or slow me down. And it worked. I built an empire. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being a person and became a function. Ethan stayed silent, sensing she needed to finish. Then you asked me for help, Serena continued. Not for money. not for advancement. You asked me to stand next to you so your daughter wouldn't see you humiliated, and I realized something. What? She turned to face him. That in 6 years, you never once treated me like a function. You treated me like a person who happened to run a company, and that's why I said yes. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. Serena, don't, she said quietly. Don't make this into something it's not. I'm not looking for connection or friendship or whatever people call it. I'm just acknowledging that you're different, and different matters. She walked back to her desk, sat down, and put her glasses back on. The moment was over, the wall back in place. Go home, Ethan. Your daughter needs you. He stood but paused at the door. For what it's worth, I think you're more than a function too. Serena didn't look up. Good night, Ethan. He left, but the conversation stayed with him all the way home. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange new rhythm. Ethan transitioned into his new role as chief of staff, a title that carried weight he was still learning to hold. His responsibilities expanded beyond managing Serena's calendar to shaping strategy, attending board meetings, and representing Blackwell Industries in negotiations that would have terrified him 6 months ago. But true to her word, Serena had restructured his schedule. He picked Mia up from school on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. He was home for dinner 4 nights a week. He still worked hard, but the work no longer consumed him. Mia noticed. You seem happier, Daddy, she said one evening as they made pasta together. Do I? Yeah, you smile more. Ethan looked down at his daughter, her hands covered in flour as she helped roll out dough, and felt something warm bloom in his chest. I think I am. Is it because of your new job? Partly. Is it because of Miss Blackwell? Ethan paused. Why do you keep asking about her? Mia shrugged. I don't know. I just think she's cool. She is cool. Do you like her? Of course I like her. She's my boss. No, I mean, like her. Ethan nearly dropped the rolling pin. Mia, where is this coming from? I heard Mom talking to Gavin on the phone. She said you and Miss Blackwell were probably together now. Ethan's jaw tightened. Your mom doesn't know what she's talking about. So you're not together? No, sweetheart. We're not. Mia looked disappointed. Oh. Why do you look sad about that? Because I think she likes you, and you like her, and it would be nice if you weren't alone all the time. The words hit Ethan harder than they should have. He knelt down to Mia's level, flour dust settling around them like snow. Baby, I'm not alone. I have you. I know. But when I grow up and go to college, you'll be alone then. Ethan's throat tightened. That's a long time from now. Still, Mia put her small, floury hand on his cheek. I want you to be happy, Daddy. Like, really happy. Not just okay. He pulled her into a hug, holding her tight, and wondered when his 8-year-old daughter had become so perceptive. That Saturday, Serena called him. Not through the office line, his personal cell. Hello? Ethan answered, surprised. I need a favor, Serena said without preamble. Okay. There's a charity gala tonight one of my board members is hosting. I'm expected to attend, but my usual +1 canceled. Ethan's stomach dropped. You want me to go with you? Yes. Serena, I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because last time we did this, people got the wrong idea. And this time, we'll let them. Her voice was calm, matter of fact. The truth is, having you at these events is useful. People treat me differently when you're there, more carefully, and I've decided I prefer it. So I'm, what? A prop? You're an asset. There's a difference. Ethan should have been offended, should have said no, but there was something in her voice, something that sounded almost like she was asking, not demanding. What time? He asked. I'll pick you up at 7. She hung up before he could change his mind. Ethan stood there staring at his phone, wondering what he'd just agreed to, then called his neighbor to see if Mia could have a sleepover with her daughter. At exactly 7 o'clock, Serena's black sedan pulled up outside Ethan's building. He was waiting on the curb in the same suit he'd worn to the wedding, the only formal option he owned. Serena stepped out wearing a silver gown that looked like liquid moonlight, her hair swept into an elegant updo. She looked at Ethan, then at the car. Get in. They drove in silence for the first 10 minutes. Then Serena said, "You're wearing the same suit." "It's the only one I have that's appropriate." "I know, that's why I'm taking you shopping next week." Ethan turned to her. "You're not buying me clothes. It's a business expense. You represent Blackwell Industries now. You need to look the part." "I look fine." "You look acceptable. I want you to look exceptional." She glanced at him. "Consider it part of your compensation package." Ethan wanted to argue, but he knew it would be pointless. Once Serena made a decision, it was made. The gala was held at the Riverside Museum, a sprawling venue of marble and glass overlooking the water. Luxury cars lined the entrance, men in tuxedos and women in couture gowns flowing up the steps like a river of wealth. Ethan and Serena entered together, her hand resting lightly on his arm. The room turned, not as dramatically as at the wedding, but enough. Heads swiveled, conversations paused, eyes tracked their movement across the floor. "They're staring again," Ethan murmured. "Let them," Serena replied. They moved through the crowd, Serena stopping occasionally to exchange pleasantries with other executives and board members. Each time she introduced Ethan not as her assistant, but as her chief of staff. The distinction mattered. People's expressions shifted from polite interest to genuine attention. An hour in, they were approached by a man in his 60s, silver-haired and commanding. Ethan recognized him from business journals. Marcus Aldridge, CEO of Aldridge Financial. "Serena," Marcus said warmly. "Always a pleasure." "Marcus," Serena's tone was cordial but guarded. Marcus turned to Ethan. "And who's this?" "Ethan Cross, my chief of staff." Marcus extended a hand. "Marcus Aldridge." Ethan shook it. "I know who you are, sir." "Do you?" Marcus's eyes gleamed with interest. "Serena doesn't usually bring anyone to these events. You must be special." "He's competent," Serena said smoothly. "That's special enough." Marcus chuckled. "I heard rumors you two were an item after that wedding a few weeks back." "People hear a lot of things," Serena replied. "Indeed they do." Marcus's gaze lingered on Ethan. "Well, if you ever tire of working for Serena, give me a call. I'm always looking for talent." "I'm exactly where I want to be," Ethan said. Something in his tone made Marcus raise an eyebrow. "Loyalty, even rarer than competence." He nodded to Serena. "You chose well." As Marcus walked away, Serena leaned closer to Ethan. "You handled that well." "He was testing me." "He was, and you passed." They found a quieter corner near the balcony, away from the crowd. The view of the river was spectacular, the city lights reflecting off the water like scattered diamonds. "Do you ever get tired of this?" Ethan asked. "Of what?" "The performance, the politics, the constant calculation." Serena was quiet for a moment. "Yes." The honesty surprised him. "But it's the cost of what I built," she continued. "You don't get to lead without learning to navigate the theater. And you never wish you could just walk away?" "To what? A small apartment and a quiet life?" Serena looked at him. "That's your dream, Ethan, not mine." "What is your dream, then?" She turned back to the view. "I don't dream anymore. I plan, I execute, I build." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." She paused. "But it's mine." Before Ethan could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Raised voices, the sharp click of heels moving fast. Both Ethan and Serena turned. Sloane was there. In a gold dress, her face flushed, arguing with security. Ethan's stomach dropped. "What is she doing here?" Serena's expression went cold. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." They crossed the room together. Sloane spotted them, and her face shifted from anger to something desperate. "Ethan," she called out, "I need to talk to you." Security stepped between them. "Ma'am, if you're not on the guest list—" "It's fine," Ethan said quietly. "Let her through." The guard hesitated, glanced at Serena, who nodded. He stepped aside. Sloane rushed forward. "I'm sorry for showing up like this, but I didn't know how else to reach you." "What's wrong?" Ethan asked, alarm creeping into his voice. "It's Gavin." Sloane's voice cracked. "The company's collapsing. There are investigations, fraud charges. He lied about everything, Ethan. The money, the properties, all of it. It's gone." Ethan stared at her, processing. What do you mean, gone? I mean, we're broke. Worse than broke. He's being arrested tomorrow. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't know what to do. I have nothing. Serena stepped forward, her voice sharp. How did you know we'd be here? Sloane wiped her eyes. I saw it on social media. Someone posted a photo of you two arriving. And you thought showing up uninvited was appropriate. I didn't know where else to go. Sloane looked at Ethan. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm desperate. I have nowhere else to turn. Ethan felt the weight of every eye in the vicinity. People were watching, whispering, phones already out. Serena's hand touched his arm, light but firm. We should move this somewhere private. Ethan nodded. There's a conference room on the second floor. They led Sloane away from the crowd, security clearing the path. Once inside the small conference room, Sloane collapsed into a chair. I'm such an idiot, she whispered. I left you because I wanted security, and I chose the biggest fraud in the city. When did you find out? Ethan asked. Yesterday. Federal agents came to the house. They said Gavin's been running a Ponzi scheme for years. Everything was leveraged. The wedding, the lifestyle, all of it was borrowed money that's now being seized. Where's Gavin now? Lawyer's office, trying to cut a deal. Sloane looked up at him. I know you hate me, and you should. But Mia, she's going to see this all over the news. Her mother married to a criminal. I don't want her to think. Mia will be fine, Ethan said firmly. I'll talk to her. Will you tell her I'm sorry? For what? For all of it. For leaving, for being selfish, for choosing money over family. Ethan sat down across from her. Sloane, I can't fix this for you. I know. But I can tell you this. You'll survive. You'll figure it out. And when you do, maybe you'll realize what actually matters. Sloane's face crumpled. I already know. I just figured it out too late. Serena, who'd been standing silently by the door, spoke up. Do you have somewhere to stay? Sloane shook her head. Everything's frozen. The accounts, the house. I can't even get a hotel room. Serena pulled out her phone, typed something, then looked at Sloane. There's a corporate apartment we keep for out-of-town clients. You can stay there for the next 2 weeks while you figure things out. After that, you're on your own. Sloane stared at her. Why would you do that? Because Ethan's daughter doesn't need the additional chaos of her mother being homeless. Serena's tone was matter of fact. This isn't charity, it's damage control. Sloane looked at Ethan, then back at Serena. Thank you. Serena didn't acknowledge it. She simply opened the door and gestured for Sloane to leave. Security will take you to the apartment. The address will be sent to your phone. Sloane stood, paused at the door. Ethan? He looked up. You deserved better than me. I know, he said quietly. She left. Ethan sat there in the silence, feeling the weight of the last 20 minutes settle on his shoulders. Serena closed the door and sat down beside him. Are you okay? I don't know. Am I supposed to feel vindicated? Because I don't. I just feel bad for her. That's because you're decent, Serena said. Most people would be celebrating right now. She made a mistake, a huge one, but she's still Mia's mother, which is why I offered the apartment. Ethan looked at her. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Because Mia matters to you, which means she matters to me. The words landed soft but heavy. Ethan met her eyes. Why are you doing all this, Serena? The promotion, the gala, helping Sloane. What's in it for you? Serena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Maybe I'm tired of being alone in a room full of people. The vulnerability in her voice was so unexpected, so raw, that Ethan didn't know how to respond. So he just reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. They sat there in the empty conference room, hands linked, the noise of the gala muffled beyond the walls. And for the first time in years, neither of them felt alone. The walk back to the office took longer than it should have. Ethan's mind was still processing the conversation with Sloane, her apology hanging in the air like something he'd waited years to hear but no longer needed. The evening sky had turned that particular shade of purple that only appeared in late autumn, and the city lights were starting to flicker on one by one, marking the transition from day to night, work to home, who people pretended to be to who they actually were. By the time Ethan reached Blackwell Industries, the building was mostly empty. The lobby echoed with his footsteps as he crossed to the elevators, rode up to the executive floor, and found his desk exactly as he'd left it. He sat down, pulled out his phone, and texted his neighbor to let her know he'd be home in 30 minutes to pick up Mia. The response came immediately. "Take your time, she's helping me bake cookies." Ethan smiled. Mia loved baking, loved the precision of measuring ingredients, the transformation of separate things into something whole. She got that from him, he supposed. The need to see how things fit together. He was about to shut down his computer when Serena's office door opened. She stepped out, still in her work clothes, her expression unreadable as always. "I thought you'd left," she said. "I did. Then I came back." "Why?" Ethan hesitated. "I needed to think." Serena walked over to his desk, leaned against it with her arms crossed. "About the promotion?" "About everything." She waited, and Ethan found himself talking before he could stop. "Sloane called, asked to meet. She apologized for leaving, for making me feel like I wasn't enough, for all of it." Serena's expression didn't change. "And how did that feel?" "Empty," Ethan admitted. "I thought I'd feel vindicated or angry or something, but I just felt done." "That's growth, is it?" "Yes." Serena's voice was matter-of-fact. "You stopped needing her validation. That's the hardest thing most people ever do." Ethan looked up at her. "Is that why you never married? Because you don't need anyone's validation?" It was a bold question, the kind he'd never have asked a week ago. Serena considered it. "I never married because I never met anyone who understood that partnership doesn't mean possession. Most people want to own you, or be owned. I'm not interested in either." "What are you interested in?" "Autonomy, respect, presence without conditions." She paused. "The same things you want." Ethan blinked. "How do you know what I want?" "Because I've watched you for 6 years. You don't ask for much. But what you do ask for, you protect fiercely." Serena's gaze was steady. "Your time with Mia, your dignity, your ability to choose your own path. Those aren't small things, Ethan. They're everything." The words settled between them, heavy with meaning. "Why did you really come to the wedding?" Ethan asked quietly. Serena was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Because I wanted to see what you'd do when you had backup." "And?" "You stood taller, not because I was there, but because you remembered you could." She pushed off the desk. "That's the person I want as my chief of staff, not the assistant who makes himself invisible. The man who knows his worth." Ethan's throat tightened. "I don't know if I can be that person all the time." "No one can. But you can be him when it matters." Serena headed back toward her office, then stopped. "Go home, Ethan. Your daughter made cookies." "How did you—" "You texted your neighbor. Your phone was on speaker when it buzzed." "Of course it was." Ethan shut down his computer, grabbed his coat, and left. But as the elevator doors closed, he realized something had shifted again. Not externally. Internally. In the way he saw himself. For the first time in years, Ethan Cross felt like he was moving forward instead of just surviving. The next 3 weeks blurred together in a whirlwind of transition. Serena announced the restructuring to the executive team, and Ethan officially became chief of staff. The title came with a significant raise, a corner office 1 floor down from Serena's, and a level of visibility he'd spent 6 years avoiding. The reactions were mixed. Some of the senior executives welcomed him with cautious professionalism, recognizing that Ethan had been the invisible machinery keeping things running all along. Others viewed him with suspicion, wondering what he'd done to earn Serena's favor so suddenly. A few made jokes about the wedding, thinly veiled questions about whether Ethan and Serena were involved, probing for gossip they could leverage. Ethan ignored all of it. He focused on the work, on learning the new role, on proving he deserved the promotion, not because Serena had given it to him, but because he'd earned it through 6 years of competence and quiet excellence. The schedule adjustment took some getting used to. Ethan now had a team of 3 junior assistants who handled the day-to-day coordination he used to manage alone. It felt strange at first, delegating tasks he'd done himself for so long, but it also freed him up to think strategically, to see the bigger picture instead of just managing the details. And true to Serena's word, he picked up Mia from school 3 days a week. Those afternoons became sacred. Walking home together, Mia chattering about her day, stopping for ice cream or playing at the park. Simple moments that reminded Ethan why he'd fought so hard to keep his life balanced. Mia noticed the change in him. "You seem happier, Daddy," she said one evening as they made dinner together. "Do I?" "Yeah, you smile more." Ethan looked down at his daughter, her small hands carefully measuring rice into a pot, and felt a surge of gratitude so intense it almost hurt. "I am happier," he said. "Because of the new job?" "Because of a lot of things." Mia grinned. "Is Ms. Blackwell one of them?" Ethan laughed. "Why do you keep asking about her?" "Because she's cool, and she was nice to me." "She was. Do you like her?" The question was innocent, but it landed with weight. "I respect her," Ethan said carefully. "She's a good boss." "But do you like her?" "Mia, it's okay if you do. I just want to know." Ethan turned off the stove, knelt down to Mia's level. "Ms. Blackwell and I work together, that's all. She helped us at the wedding because she's a kind person, but we're not dating." "But you could. It's complicated." "Why?" "Because she's my boss." "And because relationships are hard when you have other responsibilities." Mia frowned. "Like me?" "No, sweetheart. Never like you." Ethan pulled her into a hug. "You're the best thing in my life, always." "Then why can't you have both? A job and me and maybe someone else?" The simplicity of the question cut through years of Ethan's carefully constructed boundaries. Why couldn't he? He'd spent so long believing he had to choose, career or family, ambition or presence, moving forward or staying safe. But maybe those weren't binary choices. Maybe there was a third option he'd been too afraid to see. "Maybe I can," Ethan said quietly. Mia pulled back, studying his face. "So you do like her?" Ethan sighed. "It's not that simple." Grown-ups always say that. Because it's true. But later that night, after Mia was asleep, Ethan sat in his living room and admitted to himself what he'd been avoiding. He did like Serena. Not in the desperate, needy way he'd loved Sloane. Not in the way that required validation or promises or certainty. He liked her because she saw him, because she challenged him, because she didn't need him to be anything other than competent and honest. And that scared him more than anything. The following Monday, Ethan was in a senior leadership meeting when everything changed again. The meeting was routine: quarterly reviews, budget discussions, strategic planning for the next fiscal year. Ethan sat at the table with 10 other executives, taking notes and contributing when appropriate, still getting used to being part of these conversations instead of just facilitating them. Serena was presenting the acquisition timeline for a tech startup they'd been pursuing when the CFO, a sharp-eyed woman named Margaret Chen, interrupted. "Before we move forward, I think we need to address the elephant in the room." The conference room went quiet. Serena's expression didn't change. "Which elephant would that be, Margaret?" "The sudden promotion of your executive assistant to chief of staff. Some of us have questions about the circumstances." Ethan's stomach dropped. Serena set down her presentation remote. "I'm listening." Margaret glanced at the others, clearly emboldened by silent support. "We all saw the photos from the Hale wedding. You and Ethan arriving together, dancing, leaving together, and then 3 days later he's promoted to a senior leadership position." She paused. "It raises concerns about favoritism." "Concerns," Serena repeated, her voice dangerously calm. "Based on photos. Based on optics. Based on the fact that Ethan has never held a strategic role, never managed teams, never been involved in high-level decision-making, and now suddenly he's at this table." Ethan felt every eye in the room turn to him. He wanted to defend himself, to explain that he'd earned this position through 6 years of proving his competence. But before he could speak, Serena did. "Margaret, how long have you been CFO at Blackwell Industries?" Margaret frowned. 4 years. "You know that. And in those 4 years, who has coordinated every board meeting, prepared every financial briefing, and ensured that your presentations actually happened on schedule?" Margaret's jaw tightened. "Ethan did. As your assistant." "Exactly. As my assistant, Ethan has done the work of 3 people. He's managed crisis communications, coordinated international negotiations, and kept this company running smoothly through 2 major acquisitions and a market crash." Serena's gaze was ice. So when you question whether he's qualified to be chief of staff, what you're really questioning is whether I'm capable of recognizing talent. The room was silent. That's not what Margaret started. Yes, it is. Serena stood, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Let me be very clear. Ethan Cross earned this promotion through 6 years of flawless execution. The wedding was a personal favor I chose to extend because he's never asked me for anything in all that time. The two events are unrelated, and frankly, none of you have the standing to question my decisions about my own staff. Margaret's face flushed. I have a fiduciary responsibility, which you've just used as an excuse for gossip. Serena's voice cut like a blade. If you have concerns about Ethan's performance in his new role, document them and bring them to me with evidence. But if you're questioning his promotion based on tabloid speculation, you're wasting everyone's time. She picked up her presentation remote. Now, unless there are any other elephants we need to discuss, I'd like to continue. No one spoke. The meeting resumed, but the damage was done. Ethan could feel the tension radiating from his colleagues, the silent judgment, the whispered questions that would follow him out of that room. When the meeting ended, Ethan lingered as the others filed out. Margaret shot him a look that was equal parts resentment and vindication, as if he'd somehow proven her point by existing. Once they were alone, Ethan turned to Serena. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Now they're all going to think you're protecting me because we're involved. Let them think what they want. Serena began packing up her materials. Their opinions don't change the facts. But it makes me look weak, like I need you to fight my battles. Serena stopped, looked at him directly. You are not weak, Ethan, but you are new to this level of politics. Margaret wasn't questioning your qualifications. She was establishing dominance. If I'd let her comments stand, every person in that room would have assumed they could undermine you. So you embarrassed her instead. I corrected her. There's a difference. Serena's expression softened slightly. You need to understand something. At this level, silence is agreement. If you don't push back, people will assume you can be pushed. I don't want to be that person, the one who plays games and fights for power. Then don't be. Be the person who does the work so well that the games become irrelevant. She picked up her briefcase. But don't mistake kindness for weakness. And don't let anyone else make that mistake either. Ethan nodded slowly, processing. They're going to keep questioning us, he said. The wedding, the promotion, everything. I know. Does that bother you? Serena considered the question. No, because I know the truth, and so do you. She walked toward the door, then paused. Ethan, I'm going to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Okay. Do you regret accepting the promotion? Ethan thought about it, about the scrutiny, the politics, the weight of visibility. Then he thought about Mia's smile when he picked her up from school, about the raise that meant he could finally fix the leak in the bathroom and replace Mia's winter coat, about the way he felt when he solved complex problems instead of just scheduling meetings. No, he said. I don't regret it. Good, because I don't either. That evening, Ethan picked up Mia from school and they walked home through the park. The leaves were turning gold and red, falling in slow spirals, and Mia insisted on jumping in every pile they passed. Daddy, can we get pizza tonight? She asked, her face flushed from running. Sure, sweetheart. And can we watch a movie? What movie? The one with the singing animals. Ethan groaned. Again? Please? He couldn't say no to that face. They ordered pizza, settled on the couch, and Mia curled up against him as the opening credits rolled. Halfway through, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text. It was from Serena. Margaret submitted a formal complaint to HR questioning your promotion. They'll want to interview you tomorrow. Ethan stared at the screen, his stomach twisting. Mia noticed. What's wrong, Daddy? Nothing, sweetheart, just work stuff. Is it bad? Ethan looked at his daughter, her wide, trusting eyes, and made a decision. No, he said. It's just something I have to handle. Because that was the truth. This was his life now. The scrutiny, the politics, the constant need to prove himself. But it was also the promotions, the opportunities, the ability to build something better for Mia. And he'd handle it the same way he'd handled everything else, by showing up and doing the work. The next morning, Ethan sat in a windowless conference room with two HR representatives, a middle-aged man named David Park and a younger woman named Rachel Kim. They had files spread across the table and expressions of careful neutrality. "Mr. Cross, thank you for meeting with us," David began. "We've received a complaint from Margaret Chen regarding the circumstances of your recent promotion." "I'm aware," Ethan said evenly. "We want to be clear that this is a routine inquiry. We take all complaints seriously, but we're also committed to fair process." David opened a folder. "Can you describe your relationship with Ms. Blackwell?" "Professional," Ethan said. "I worked as her executive assistant for 6 years before being promoted to chief of staff." "And outside of work?" "We're colleagues, nothing more." Rachel leaned forward. "Mr. Cross, you attended a wedding together that's documented in multiple social media posts. Ms. Blackwell accompanied me to my ex-wife's wedding as a favor. It was a one-time event." "A favor," David repeated, writing something down. "Can you elaborate on why she would extend such a favor?" Ethan chose his words carefully. "I asked her to go with me because my daughter wanted both her parents at the wedding, and I didn't want to attend alone. Ms. Blackwell agreed because I've worked for her for 6 years without asking for personal favors." "So you acknowledge asking your superior for a personal favor?" "Yes." "And 3 days later, you were promoted." "The promotion was offered before the wedding," Ethan said. "I initially declined it because I was concerned about work-life balance. After the wedding, I reconsidered and accepted." Rachel exchanged a glance with David. "Do you have any documentation of that timeline?" "No. It was a verbal conversation." "I see." David made another note. "Mr. Cross, can you explain why Miss Blackwell felt you were qualified for a chief of staff position when you have no prior experience in strategic leadership?" This was the real question, the one that mattered. Ethan leaned forward. "For 6 years, I've managed Ms. Blackwell's entire operation. I've coordinated board meetings, prepared executive briefings, managed crisis communications, and facilitated negotiations across 3 continents. I know every department, every executive, every moving piece of this company. What I lacked was the title. The promotion recognized work I was already doing. But you've never managed teams." "I've coordinated dozens of teams across multiple departments. I may not have had direct reports, but I've been responsible for ensuring their work aligned with executive priorities." "That's not the same as leadership," Rachel said. "No," Ethan agreed. "But it's the foundation, and I'm learning the rest." David closed his folder. "Mr. Cross, I'm going to be direct with you. The optics of your situation are complicated. A single father attending a wedding with his female boss, followed immediately by a significant promotion. It creates an appearance of impropriety, even if the reality is innocent." "I understand that," Ethan said, "but appearance isn't evidence." "No, but it's enough to damage reputations." David's expression was sympathetic. "We're going to need to interview Ms. Blackwell as well. And we'll need to review your performance evaluations, communications, and any documentation of your responsibilities over the past 6 years. I'll provide whatever you need." Rachel stood. "We appreciate your cooperation. We'll be in touch." Ethan left the conference room feeling like he'd just been through an interrogation. He went back to his office, closed the door, and tried to focus on work. But his mind kept circling back to the same question. Was it worth it? The promotion, the scrutiny, the constant need to defend himself? His phone buzzed. A text from Mia's school. "Mia did great on her math test. Wanted you to know." Ethan smiled. "Yeah, it was worth it." That afternoon, Serena called him into her office. She was standing by the window, looking out at the city, her posture rigid. "They interviewed you," she said without turning around. "Yes. And now they're going to interview me." "I figured." Serena turned to face him. "This is going to get worse before it gets better." "I know." "Margaret is building a case. She's going to argue that I promoted you because we're personally involved, and she's going to use the wedding as evidence." "Can she do that?" "She can try." Serena's jaw tightened. "And if she succeeds, it won't just hurt you. It'll hurt my credibility. The board will question my judgment. Competitors will see weakness." Ethan felt the weight of it settling on his shoulders. "I can resign." "No." "Serena?" "No." Her voice was firm. "You earned this position. I'm not letting Margaret's political maneuvering undo that. But if it hurts you, Then it hurts me, but I'm not sacrificing you to protect myself. Serena walked to her desk, sat down with deliberate calm. We're going to fight this together, and we're going to win. How? By being exactly who we are. Competent, professional, unshakable. She met his eyes. Can you do that? Ethan thought about Mia, about the life he was building, about the man he was becoming. Yes, he said. Good. Serena pulled up a document on her computer. Then let's get to work. Over the next week, the investigation intensified. HR interviewed a dozen employees, reviewed 6 years of email correspondence, and compiled a detailed report of Ethan's responsibilities and performance. The rumors spread like wildfire. People whispered in hallways, made jokes in the break room, speculated about what was really going on between Ethan and Serena. Ethan ignored it and focused on the work. He led his first major strategy meeting, outlining a restructuring plan for the operations division. The presentation was flawless, backed by data and delivered with quiet confidence. The executives listened. Some nodded. A few asked sharp questions. Ethan answered everyone. By the end of the meeting, the room was quieter than it had been at the start. Not because they were convinced, but because he'd made it harder to dismiss him. That evening, Ethan picked up Mia and took her to the playground. She ran straight for the swings, and Ethan pushed her higher and higher until she was laughing so hard she could barely breathe. Higher, Daddy. You're going to fly away. Good, Ethan laughed, and for a moment, everything else fell away. When Mia finally tired out, they sat on a bench and shared a bag of pretzels. Daddy, are you in trouble at work? Mia asked suddenly. Ethan looked at her, surprised. Why would you think that? You've been quiet, and sometimes you look worried. He sighed. Some people at work think I got my new job for the wrong reasons. Like what? Like because Ms. Blackwell likes me, instead of because I'm good at my job. Mia frowned. But you are good at your job. I know. Then why does it matter what they think? Ethan pulled her close. Because sometimes people believe things that aren't true, and that can make things hard. That's dumb. Yeah, it is. Mia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Ms. Blackwell knows you're good, right? Yeah. And I know you're good. Yeah. Then you have 2 people who believe in you. That's pretty good. Ethan felt his throat tighten. You're right, sweetheart. That's more than enough. They walked home hand in hand, and Ethan realized something. No matter what happened with the investigation, with Margaret, with the board, he'd already won. Because he had Mia, and that was the only victory that mattered. The next morning, HR released their findings. David and Rachel called Ethan and Serena into a meeting together, and Ethan's heart pounded as they walked into the conference room. David gestured for them to sit. We've completed our investigation, he began. We interviewed 15 employees, reviewed 6 years of correspondence, and analyzed performance data going back to Mr. Cross's hiring. Ethan held his breath. Our finding is that there is no evidence of impropriety or favoritism in Mr. Cross's promotion. Ethan exhaled. The record shows consistent high performance, expanding responsibilities, and unanimous positive feedback from colleagues across departments. Rachel continued. Mr. Cross's promotion to Chief of Staff is supported by his track record and qualifications. David looked at Serena. However, we do have a recommendation. Which is? Serena asked. Moving forward, we suggest additional transparency around senior promotions. While we found no wrongdoing, the optics created unnecessary speculation. A more formalized promotion process would prevent similar situations. Serena nodded. Agreed. I'll work with HR to develop that. Thank you. And David closed his folder. That concludes our investigation. They stood, shook hands, and left. In the hallway, Ethan turned to Serena. We won, he said quietly. We survived, Serena corrected. There's a difference. But they cleared us. They cleared the record. People will believe what they want. She paused. But you proved something, Ethan. What? That you belong here. Not because I said so, because you earned it. Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of the past week finally lift. They walked back toward their offices, and as they reached Serena's door, she said, Ethan? Yeah? Thank you. For what? For not quitting, for fighting, for proving I was right about you. Ethan smiled. Any time. And for the first time since the wedding, he felt like himself again, strong, capable, unshakable, exactly who he needed to be. The weeks that followed felt like walking through a minefield that had already been cleared. The danger was over, but Ethan couldn't shake the instinct to watch his step. The HR investigation had cleared him. Margaret Chen had gone conspicuously quiet, and the whispers in the hallways had shifted from accusation to grudging acceptance. But acceptance wasn't respect, and Ethan knew the difference. He threw himself into the work with a focus that bordered on obsessive. Every strategy meeting, every presentation, every decision became an opportunity to prove that his promotion hadn't been a mistake. He arrived early, stayed late, and prepared for every scenario with the kind of thoroughness that left no room for criticism. But there was a cost. On a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after the HR findings were released, Ethan sat in his office reviewing projections for the upcoming quarterly review when his phone rang. It was his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who occasionally watched Mia when Ethan's schedule ran long. "Ethan, I hate to bother you, but Mia's been asking when you're coming home. It's almost 8. Ethan looked at his watch and felt his stomach drop. He'd promised to be home by 6:30 for dinner and homework help. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Chen. I lost track of time. I'll be there in 20 minutes. "It's okay, dear. She's fine. We made grilled cheese. But she misses you." The words hit harder than they should have. Ethan packed up his laptop, grabbed his coat, and was halfway to the elevator when Serena's office door opened. "Leaving?" she asked. "I'm late picking up Mia. I promised to be home 2 hours ago." Serena's expression shifted, something that might have been concern crossing her features. "You've been working 12-hour days for 3 weeks. I know. That's not sustainable. I don't have a choice. People are watching every move I make. If I slack off, if I give them any reason to question—" "Ethan," Serena's voice was firm, "you're proving a point to people who've already decided what they think. You could work 24 hours a day, and they'd still find something to criticize. So what am I supposed to do? Just accept that I'll always be the assistant who got lucky? No, you're supposed to do the job you were hired to do. Well, without sacrificing the reason you took it in the first place." She walked closer, her gaze steady. What was that reason? Ethan hesitated. Mia, to give her a better life. And how is working yourself to exhaustion giving her a better life? The question landed like a punch. "Go home," Serena said quietly. "Your daughter needs you more than this company does tonight." Ethan nodded, too tired to argue, and left. When he got home, Mia was sitting at the kitchen table with Mrs. Chen, drawing pictures with crayons. She looked up when he walked in, and her face lit up for a second before falling into something more guarded. "Hi, Daddy." "Hi, sweetheart. I'm so sorry I'm late." Mia shrugged, not quite meeting his eyes. "It's okay. You're busy." Mrs. Chen stood, gathering her things. "I'll leave you two alone. Mia, those are beautiful drawings." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." After she left, Ethan sat down across from his daughter. "I really am sorry, Mia. I know I promised to be home earlier." "You always promise," Mia said quietly, still coloring. "But then work is more important." The words cut deeper than any accusation from Margaret or scrutiny from HR ever could. "That's not true," Ethan said. "You're the most important thing in my life." "Then why are you never here?" Ethan didn't have a good answer. Mia set down her crayon and finally looked at him. "I thought the new job was supposed to make things better, but you're always tired and always working and you don't smile anymore." "I smile." "Not like before. Not like when Ms. Blackwell came to the wedding." Mia's voice was small. "I liked you better then." Ethan felt something crack inside him. He'd been so focused on proving himself, on defending his promotion, on showing everyone he belonged, that he'd forgotten what he was fighting for. "You're right," he said quietly. "I've been working too much. Are you going to stop?" "I'm going to try." Mia studied him with those wide, serious eyes that saw more than any 8-year-old should have to. "Do you promise?" "I promise," Ethan said. "And this time I mean it." Mia nodded slowly, then pushed one of her drawings across the table. It was a picture of the two of them at the park, holding hands with a bright yellow sun overhead. I drew this for you, so you remember. Ethan picked up the drawing, his throat tight. Thank you, sweetheart. I love it. That night, after Mia went to bed, Ethan sat on his couch and had a conversation with himself that was long overdue. He'd spent 3 weeks trying to prove he was worthy of his promotion by becoming someone he wasn't, someone who prioritized optics over substance, perception over reality, work over family. He'd become exactly what he'd always feared, a person who let fear dictate his choices. And he was done with it. The next morning, Ethan walked into Serena's office at 8 o'clock sharp. I need to make some changes, he said. Serena looked up from her laptop. I'm listening. I've been overcompensating, working too much, trying too hard to prove myself to people whose opinions don't actually matter, and it's hurting Mia. What do you want to do about it? I want to set boundaries, real ones. No work after 6 unless there's a genuine emergency. No weekend work unless it's critical. And I need to delegate more instead of doing everything myself. Serena nodded slowly. That sounds reasonable. I know it might make me look weak to some people, like I can't handle the role, but I'd rather be a good father than a perfect chief of staff. Ethan, Serena's voice was gentle. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. A good leader knows their limits and works within them. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Then you're okay with this. I'm more than okay with it. I've been waiting for you to realize you don't have to destroy yourself to prove your worth. She leaned back in her chair. The people who matter already know you're qualified. The people who don't will never be convinced, so stop performing for them. Ethan felt the tension he'd been carrying for weeks finally start to ease. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me. Just do the work. The real work, not the performance. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan restructured his approach entirely. He delegated tasks to his team, trusted them to execute without micromanaging, and left the office by 6 every single day. The first few times felt wrong, like he was abandoning ship, but gradually it started to feel normal. And something remarkable happened. The work didn't fall apart. His team stepped up. Projects continued smoothly, and Ethan discovered that his value wasn't in doing everything himself. It was in making sure the right people were doing the right things. Meanwhile, his relationship with Mia transformed back into what it had been before the promotion. They cooked dinner together, did homework at the kitchen table, played board games and watched movies and talked about her day. Simple moments that reminded Ethan what actually mattered. One evening, about a month after the HR investigation closed, Mia looked up from her math homework and said, "You're smiling again." Ethan grinned. "Am I?" "Yeah, like you used to." "That's because I'm happy." "Because of work?" "Because of you," Ethan said, "and because I remembered what I was working for." Mia smiled, satisfied, and went back to her multiplication tables. That same week, Margaret Chen requested a meeting with Serena. Ethan only knew about it because Serena's assistant mentioned it in passing while coordinating schedules. He didn't ask what it was about. It wasn't his business, but he couldn't help wondering if Margaret was making another attempt to undermine his position. The meeting lasted 15 minutes. When it was over, Serena called Ethan into her office. "Margaret resigned," she said without preamble. Ethan blinked. "What?" "She submitted her resignation this morning. 2 weeks' notice. She's taking a CFO position at a competitor." Did you force her out?" "No, she made the decision herself." Serena's expression was unreadable. "Though I suspect she realized her position here had become untenable after the investigation cleared you." Ethan sat down slowly. "I don't know how to feel about that." "Don't feel anything. She made a choice based on her own ambitions and miscalculations. That's not on you." "But if I hadn't accepted the promotion, then she would have found another target. People like Margaret don't question decisions because they care about fairness. They do it because they're positioning for power." Serena's gaze was steady. "Her leaving is probably the best outcome for everyone." Ethan nodded, trying to process it. "There's something else," Serena said. "I'm promoting someone internally to replace her. And I want your input on the candidates." "Mine?" "You're chief of staff. Personnel decisions at the executive level are part of your role now." She pulled up a file on her computer. "So let's start reviewing candidates." They spent the next hour analyzing resumes, discussing strengths and weaknesses, debating cultural fit versus technical expertise. It was the kind of strategic conversation Ethan would have facilitated 6 months ago from the outside. Now he was inside it, making decisions that would shape the company's future. And it felt right. Not because he'd proven anything to anyone, but because he was good at it. A week later, on a crisp Saturday afternoon, Ethan and Mia were at the park when his phone rang. He almost didn't answer. Weekends were sacred time, but the caller ID said Serena Blackwell. "I'm sorry to bother you on a Saturday," Serena said when he picked up. "It's fine. What's going on?" "I'm at a charity fundraiser downtown. Very tedious, very formal. I was supposed to bring a guest, but they canceled last minute." She paused. "I was wondering if you and Mia might want to join me." Ethan frowned. A charity fundraiser isn't really Mia's scene. It's at the Natural History Museum. They have the entire dinosaur exhibit open for guests. I thought she might enjoy that part. Mia looked up at the mention of dinosaurs, her eyes wide. "Dinosaurs?" Ethan covered the phone. "Ms. Blackwell is asking if we want to go to a museum event with her." "With the dinosaurs?" "Yes." "Can we go? Please?" Ethan sighed, then spoke into the phone. "What time?" 3 o'clock. I'll have a car pick you up." "We can take the train." "Ethan, let me send a car." An hour later, a black sedan arrived at Ethan's apartment building. Mia was wearing her nicest dress, the one she'd worn to the wedding, and she couldn't stop bouncing with excitement. "Are there going to be real dinosaur bones?" she asked for the 10th time. "Yes, sweetheart." "Like actual fossils?" "Yes." "That's so cool." The car took them downtown to the museum, a grand stone building with marble columns and sweeping steps. A crowd of well-dressed attendees milled around the entrance, sipping champagne and making polite conversation. Serena was waiting near the main doors, wearing a deep green dress that was elegant without being ostentatious. She spotted them and walked over. "Right on time," she said, then looked at Mia. "Are you ready to see some dinosaurs?" Mia nodded enthusiastically. "Yes!" "Then let's go." They walked inside together, past the cocktail reception and into the museum proper. The dinosaur exhibit was magnificent, towering skeletons of T-Rexes and Triceratops, interactive displays explaining extinction events, fossil beds preserved behind glass. Mia's eyes went wide. She ran from display to display, reading every placard, asking a million questions. Ethan tried to keep up, answering what he could, while Serena followed at a more measured pace. At one point, Mia stopped in front of a massive Brachiosaurus skeleton and just stared, completely awestruck. "They were real," she whispered. "They were," Serena said, coming to stand beside her. "Millions of years ago, they walked on the same planet we're standing on now." "That's amazing." "It is." Mia looked up at Serena. "Do you like dinosaurs?" "I do. I used to come to this museum when I was about your age. The dinosaurs were my favorite part." "Really?" "Really?" Mia smiled, then took Serena's hand without hesitation. "Come on, I want to show you the Stegosaurus." Serena glanced at Ethan, something soft in her expression, then let Mia lead her across the hall. Ethan watched them go, this powerful CEO and his 8-year-old daughter, and felt something shift in his chest. Something warm and unfamiliar, and maybe a little bit terrifying. Because for the first time since Sloane had left, Ethan could imagine a future that included more than just him and Mia. A future where someone else was part of their small family, and that someone might be Serena Blackwell. They spent 2 hours in the museum. Mia asked Serena approximately 10,000 questions, and Serena answered every single one with patience and genuine interest. They took pictures in front of the T-Rex, explored the fossil prep lab, watched a short film about the meteor that ended the dinosaurs. By the time they left, Mia was exhausted and happy, clutching a stuffed Triceratops that Serena had bought her from the gift shop. "Thank you, Ms. Blackwell," Mia said as they walked to the car. "That was the best day ever." "You're welcome, Mia. I had a wonderful time." "Can we do it again sometime?" Serena glanced at Ethan, then smiled at Mia. "I'd like that." In the car on the way home, Mia fell asleep almost immediately, her head resting against Ethan's shoulder, the stuffed dinosaur clutched in her arms. Serena watched her for a moment, then said quietly, "She's a remarkable kid." "She is," Ethan agreed. "You've done a good job with her." "I've tried." Serena was quiet for a moment, then said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "When was the last time you did something just for yourself? Not for Mia, not for work, just for you?" Ethan thought about it. "I honestly can't remember." "That's what I thought." Serena's gaze was thoughtful. "You take care of everyone else. Who takes care of you?" "I don't need anyone to take care of me." "Everyone needs someone, Ethan, even you." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. "Is that why you invited us today?" Ethan asked. "To take care of me?" "I invited you because I wanted your company, and because Mia deserves nice things, and because—" She trailed off. "Because what?" Serena met his eyes. "Because I've spent my entire adult life building walls to keep people at a distance, and you somehow ended up on the other side of them without even trying." Ethan's heart was pounding. "Serena, I'm not asking for anything," she said quickly. "I'm not making declarations or promises. I just wanted you to know that I enjoy your company, both of you. And if you're open to it, I'd like to keep spending time together. No expectations, no pressure, just presence." It was the most vulnerable thing Ethan had ever heard her say. "I'd like that," he said quietly. Serena smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "Good." The car pulled up in front of Ethan's apartment building. He carefully lifted Mia into his arms, and Serena walked them to the door. "Thank you," Ethan said, "for today, for everything." "You keep thanking me," Serena said, "but I should be thanking you." "For what?" "For reminding me that there's more to life than work, that presence matters, that sometimes the people who ask for the least deserve the most." She reached out and gently touched his arm, just for a moment. Then she got back in the car and drove away. Ethan stood there, Mia sleeping in his arms, and realized something profound. He wasn't alone anymore. Not because Serena had fixed his life or solved his problems, but because she'd chosen to show up, just like she had at the wedding. And maybe that was enough. The next few months unfolded with a rhythm that felt almost normal. Ethan continued excelling in his role as chief of staff, earning respect through consistent performance rather than desperate overwork. His team functioned smoothly, his relationships with other executives improved, and slowly, the whispers about his promotion faded into irrelevance. Serena kept her promise about spending time together. Some weekends, she'd invite Ethan and Mia to museum exhibits or plays or quiet dinners at restaurants where Mia could color on the tablecloth without judgment. Other times, they'd just meet at the park and walk while Mia played, talking about work and life and everything in between. It wasn't romance in the traditional sense. It was something quieter, more intentional. Two people who'd learned to exist in each other's orbit without demanding more than the other could give. And for Ethan, that was exactly what he needed. One evening in late spring, 6 months after the wedding that had changed everything, Ethan was tucking Mia into bed when she asked, "Daddy, is Ms. Blackwell your girlfriend now?" Ethan sat on the edge of her bed. "We're friends. Good friends. But you like her, right?" "I do." "And she likes you?" "I think so." Mia considered this. "Are you going to marry her?" Ethan laughed softly. "That's a big question, sweetheart." "But are you?" "I don't know. Maybe someday. But right now, we're just enjoying spending time together." "Okay," Mia yawned. "I like her. She's nice, and she buys good presents." "She does." "If you do marry her, can I be in the wedding?" "Of course." "Good." Mia's eyes were already closing. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, sweetheart." Ethan kissed her forehead and turned off the light. In the living room, he poured himself a glass of water and stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. His phone buzzed with the text from Serena. "Mia asleep?" "Just now, she asked if we're getting married." "What did you tell her?" "That we're taking it one day at a time." "Smart man?" Ethan smiled, then typed, "Thank you for being patient with me. With us." The response came quickly. "Patience isn't a virtue when you're getting exactly what you want." "And what do you want?" There was a pause, then, "Presence, without conditions. Exactly what you give me." Ethan stared at the message, feeling something warm settle in his chest. "Same," he typed back. The next morning at work, Ethan was in a leadership meeting when his phone buzzed with an unexpected call. The caller ID showed a number he recognized but hadn't expected to hear from again. Gavin Hale. Ethan stepped out of the meeting to take it. Mr. Cross. Gavin's voice was smooth, professional. I hope I'm not interrupting. What can I do for you, Mr. Hale? I'm calling with an opportunity. Hale Development is expanding our executive team, and we're looking for a chief operating officer, someone with strategic vision and the ability to manage complex operations. He paused. Your name came up in our discussions. Ethan frowned. I'm not looking to leave Blackwell Industries. I understand, but I'd encourage you to at least hear the offer. The compensation package is substantial. 7 figures. Stock options. Full benefits. And the ability to shape the future of a growing company. 7 figures. The number echoed in Ethan's mind. That kind of money would change everything. A bigger apartment, better schools for Mia, financial security he'd never dreamed of. Why me? Ethan asked. Because you've proven you can operate at the highest levels. And because someone with your background, your work ethic, your values, is exactly what we need. I'll think about it, Ethan said carefully. That's all I ask. I'll have my assistant send over the details. No pressure. Just consider it. The call ended, and Ethan stood in the hallway, his mind racing. 7 figures, chief operating officer, everything he'd never let himself want. He went back into the meeting, but he couldn't focus. The number kept circling in his head, along with images of what that money could buy. A house with a yard, college savings for Mia, vacations, stability beyond anything he'd ever known. That evening, he told Serena about the call. They were in her office, working late on a presentation, when Ethan finally said, Gavin Hale called me today. He offered me a job. Serena's expression didn't change. As what? Chief Operating Officer, 7-figure salary. I see. She set down her pen. And what did you tell him? That I'd think about it. Serena nodded slowly. That's a significant offer. It is. Are you going to take it? Ethan looked at her, trying to read her face. I don't know. Part of me thinks I'd be crazy not to. That kind of money would change Mia's life. It would. But the other part, he trailed off. What? The other part knows why he's offering it. He doesn't care about my work ethic or my values. He wants access to you, to Blackwell Industries, to whatever he thinks I know. Serena's lips curved slightly. You're learning. So it's a trap. It's leverage. Whether it's a trap depends on what you do with it. Ethan sat down heavily. What would you do? I can't answer that for you. Why not? Because this is your choice, not mine. Serena leaned back in her chair. But I will say this. Money is important. Security is important. But so is integrity. And the question you need to ask yourself is whether you can maintain yours while working for someone like Gavin Hale. Ethan knew she was right. There's something else, Serena said quietly. If you take that job, we can't keep seeing each other. Not professionally, and probably not personally either. Ethan's stomach dropped. Why not? Because you'd be working for a competitor. Everything you know about Blackwell Industries would become a conflict of interest. And our relationship, whatever it is, would be scrutinized by both companies. So I'd have to choose. The job or you. The job or this, Serena corrected. What we're building. Ethan closed his eyes. 7 figures or Serena. Security or presence. The safe choice or the right one. I need time to think, he said. Take all the time you need. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running calculations in his head. With 7 figures, he could buy a house, save for Mia's college. Never worry about money again. But he'd also be working for Gavin Hale, a man he didn't trust, in an environment built on leverage and manipulation, doing work that might compromise everything he'd spent 6 years building. And he'd lose Serena. Not just as a boss, but as whatever she was becoming, friend, partner, maybe more. By morning, Ethan had his answer. He called Gavin and said, Thank you for the offer, but I'm going to decline. I'm committed to Blackwell Industries and the work we're doing here. Gavin was quiet for a moment. That's disappointing, but I respect your loyalty. It's not about loyalty, Ethan said. It's about integrity. Fair enough? If you ever change your mind, the door's open. I won't, but I appreciate the offer. Ethan hung up and felt the weight lift. He hadn't chosen security, he'd chosen himself. When he told Serena later that day, she simply nodded and said, "Good decision." "You're not surprised?" "No, I knew you'd make the right choice." "How?" "Because you always do." She smiled. "Even when it's hard." 3 months later, on a warm summer evening, Ethan and Serena took Mia to an outdoor concert in the park. It was a casual event, families spread across blankets, kids running through the grass, music drifting across the open space. Mia was playing with a group of children near the stage, while Ethan and Serena sat on a blanket, watching the sun set over the city. "She's happy," Serena observed. "She is," Ethan agreed. "So are you." Ethan turned to look at her. "Yeah, I am." Serena's hand found his, their fingers interlacing naturally. "I need to tell you something." "Okay." "I've spent my whole life avoiding this. Avoiding connection, avoiding vulnerability, avoiding the risk of needing someone." She paused. "But I need you, and that terrifies me." Ethan squeezed her hand. "It terrifies me too." "But you're here anyway." "So are you." Serena smiled, and it was the most open expression Ethan had ever seen on her face. "I suppose we're both braver than we thought. Or more foolish. Maybe both." They sat in comfortable silence, watching Mia dance with the other kids, and Ethan realized something profound. This was enough. Not perfect. Not easy. Not without complications or challenges or moments of doubt. But enough. Because he had Mia, who was thriving and happy and loved. He had work that mattered, that challenged him, that respected his skills. He had Serena, who saw him completely and chose to stay anyway. And he had himself. Not the man Sloane had left, not the invisible assistant, not the person desperately trying to prove his worth. Just Ethan Cross, a good father, a capable professional, a man worthy of respect not because of what he owned or who he knew, but because of who he was. The music swelled, and Mia ran back to them, breathless and glowing. "Daddy, did you see me dancing?" "I did, sweetheart. You were amazing." She threw herself onto the blanket between them. "This is the best night ever." Serena caught Ethan's eye over Mia's head, and they shared a smile. "Yeah," Ethan said quietly. "It really is." As the concert continued and the stars began to appear overhead, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was exactly what it needed to be. And that night, walking home with Mia's hand in his and Serena beside him, Ethan finally understood what he'd been searching for all along. Not validation, not revenge, not proof that he was enough. Just the simple, profound truth that he'd been enough all along. The wedding invitation that had felt like a death sentence had become the catalyst for everything that came after. The humiliation he'd feared had turned into opportunity. The woman who'd been his boss had become his partner. The promotion he doubted had proven his worth. Nothing had changed on paper. Sloane was still married to Gavin, living her life of wealth and status. Margaret had found another company to navigate. The world kept spinning the same way it always had. But everything inside Ethan had transformed. He no longer needed anyone's permission to believe in himself. He no longer measured his worth by someone else's standards. He'd built a life on his own terms, not grand or glamorous, but real and solid in his. And as he tucked Mia into bed that night, kissed her forehead, and walked back to his living room where Serena was waiting with 2 cups of tea, Ethan realized that he'd won after all. Not the battle he'd thought he was fighting, but the one that actually mattered, the battle to remember who he was. And that was the greatest victory of all.